Welcome to the Church Growth Podcast. My name is Jason Hamrock. I am your host today. And I have Dale Sellers on the podcast. Dale is the executive director of the 95 Network. Now, this is a really cool organization. The 95 Network serves churches that are in 500 attendance and below, which means they actually serve 95% of the churches in America because 95% of the churches in America have an attendance of 500 or less. This is a great organization, and I'm excited for you to hear from Dale. But if you're a church that's over 500, you're going to gain some wisdom as well, especially if you've been in this season and have just kind of felt stuck or stalled. Dale wrote a book recently called Stalled, and he speaks about that in our podcast today. Well, hey, Dale, glad to have you on the podcast. How you doing today?
Man, I'm having the time of my life.
Awesome. Well,
beginning a new year off, and we're just hitting the ground running.
Yeah, good to connect. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man.
So share a little bit about your ministry experience and how you ended up serving with 95 Network.
Boy, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
So I'm 58 at the time we recorded this. I've been in ministry for almost 40 years.
Wow.
And my wife and I met at basically at a Christian college. We traveled with their music group. It went out of the admissions department, but it would go into the churches, and they would do concerts, and then would tell about the college. And so we did that. This is back in the 80s before you were born. This is back in the time when Christian music, it was just groups everywhere. It was a huge thing. And we did that for about 3 years, and then we started our own ministry, our own music group. And so the first 10 years we were married, we did about 1,100 concerts in churches in over 30 states. And I just love that. I really thought that's what we would do the rest of our life, because I love the church. I was saved when I was 7 years old. It was just an incredible experience. It was just like I spent the whole podcast talking about it, but I won't. But I've always loved the church, and so as we did this group traveled in our 20s and in our 30s, we would come in contact with all these pastors, and they were always discouraged. And I'm like, I don't understand, because I'm a 20-year-old kid and I'm high energy, and the glass is always totally full to me. But anyway, I'm like, what's happening here with these pastors? Why are they so discouraged? Where's their fire? Where's their passion? All that kind of stuff. But when you're in a music group, you blow in, blow up, and blow out. You're not there. Right. So when I came off the road, started working in a local church, it took me about 2 weeks to figure out what had happened to all these pastors. They were pastoring people, and people will just wear you out. And so even then, I began to get a deep-seated love for the church and for the pastors. A few years later, I pastored a small church that grew from 30 to 300 back to 150 because we had a terrible split. But simultaneously, I also was working at a very large Christian radio station doing events and things like that. And again, I began to work with all these churches. And so it's just been a part of my life. In the year 2000, I had the opportunity to go to work for John Maxwell. And which was my dream job. I just had him up on such a pedestal. But it wasn't God's timing, so I did not take that job. And so I thought what I'm doing today, that this ship had kind of sailed, and that I would spend the rest of my life kind of serving either as I've been an executive pastor. Actually, I've served in every capacity on a church staff except for minister of music, which is odd because I had a music group. Yeah. But anyway, I just thought that ship had sailed. And then a few years ago, in February of 2014, one morning in the shower, the Lord just spoke to me and said, "It's time to launch your leadership ministry." I'm like, "You're kidding me. I'm out of it's been 14 years. I'm out of the loop. I don't know what's going on." He goes, "Yeah, I got you right where I want you." And so I just went out and started a ministry called Dale Sellers Leadership. How about that one, huh? And then things have just evolved from there. I was trained in a process called StratOp to help churches do strategic and operational planning. And then I worked for a couple of years with the Unstuck group, doing specifically focusing on small churches through Unstuck and Tony Morgan. Yep. And then met a guy named Jim Powell who used to pastor Richwood's Christian Church in Peoria, Illinois, and he had founded a new nonprofit called the 95 Network. The name comes from the fact that of the 300,000 churches in America, 95% have less than 500 people attending. 87% have less than 200 people attending, and about 70% of all the churches in America have less than 100 people attending. And so what I knew to be true was all the great resources that exist, the great, the consultants, the programs, it's always out of reach for the small church guy.
Yeah.
When I pastored a small church, I couldn't hire a consultant and bring them in. We were trying to pay the bills,
Mm.
and so I'm like, I thank God for 95 Network because it's a nonprofit and it provides all these resources to help churches. And so Jim asked me to join the board, and then a couple of years later, he felt like God had called him to step down, and he turned it over to me and some other pastors. And then in July, it'll be 3 years this coming July, 2.5 years ago, I became executive director, and we literally work with thousands of churches now,
Yeah.
all across America. And the cool thing is we're working in just about every denomination you can think of. Because we love the local church. And as I was saying to you before we came on, this is it, man. This is it. There's no plan B. The church is it. This is what Jesus left us. And so our job, our vision at 95 Network is that we want to connect small and mid-sized churches with big resources. And you'll love our vision. And our vision is to bring healthy change to every church in America. That's a big vision.
Yeah, it's a huge vision.
And we're going to do it through partnerships with people just like you. We're all working together to help the church. So that's the 5-minute overview.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about what 95 Network does. And I love the vision. I love that idea of we want to help impact every single church. So give us a little bit of breakdown as to how you actually help the church, the 95% of churches that are under 500.
We call them the 5 C's. That's what we have. The first one is content. So we have a membership where you can join 95 Network. It costs $95 a year. So that's not too bad.
Yeah.
That's not too expensive.
Pretty affordable.
And inside our membership, we created a content portal, and we have provided just incredible amounts of practical things that pastors can use to help grow their church. Most pastors were trained on how to preach. They were trained on how to do weddings and funerals, but they weren't trained how to lead.
Right.
And so basically, I heard John Maxwell say this 20 years ago, the thing that we need to do the most, nobody told us how to do it. And so we provide content. The second thing we do is we do conferences. Even in the COVID era, we've switched a lot of those conferences to being online, but we typically do 15 to 20 conferences a year where we're out. And our vision for the conferences is this. If you've been out to a large church conference and you're a small church pastor, you walk there, and when you leave from that conference, you might be fired up, but you walk away and you think one of two things. You look at what they did and you go, we could never do that at our church. You see all the lights and the haze, which is not smoke, it's haze, and all that stuff and the bands, and you go, so you leave defeated. Or worse, you go back and try to do that, and you lose your job in 2 weeks. Because they say, you tried to set the church on fire, you've got smoke. And so most of the conferences really leave a small church pastor leaving more discouraged than encouraged. So we create a one-day conference. We teach around 5 growth actions. We talk about mission and vision. That's our first session. The second one's about leadership development. The third one is how to have a clear discipleship pathway or next steps pathway versus programs. The fourth thing is about how to have good communication, both inward and outward. And we wrap the day up by talking about how to create a healthy volunteer culture. We do it we like to do it in a room without any kind of fancy lighting. We want to be, if we can, in fellowship hall around round tables.
Yeah.
We teach for 40 minutes, and then we allow 20 minutes for the pastors to answer questions together that we've provided just about how they're doing with these things. And the whole day is designed to encourage and strengthen the pastor. Only charge $35 for it. And we don't charge the host church anything. So it's, we can't get any of it more affordable than that.
Right.
So we do that, but we've also been doing some virtually because of how things have changed. So that's the conferences. The next thing we do is coaching. We've got an entire division within 95 Network that we can provide coaching, either just a one-time call like with me, or we've got you can do a 6-month coaching, a year coaching. We've got a very specific coaching plan that we've developed through one of our staff guys named Chad Hunt, and then we do consulting. And we do that either by partnering with people like the Unstuck Group or the Malfors Group. We also at 95 Network do a thing called Vision Day, where I'll come in, and let's just say you're pastoring a church of 100 people. We'll come in on a Saturday, and we'll spend from about 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and we will just work through the individual issues of your church. Again, I was trained in StratOp, and I've worked with the Unstuck group, and those processes are so good.
Yeah.
They're so thorough. They're so detailed. But what I discovered was a lot of churches who've never been through anything like that just get overwhelmed. And so I created a process that basically we talk about your history, who you're trying to reach, what their values are, your mission, your vision. We talk a little bit about what are you doing currently that's sustaining growth. And we pick one action item that you're going to focus on for the next 12 to 18 months to help your church grow. Because here's what happens in the small church. The small church tends to do 20 things poorly instead of doing 1 or 2 things really well. Because it feels like, well, hey, there's a church down the street that's got 600 people in it. We need to offer the same things they offer. Well, you can't. You don't have the resources, the people, the space. And so we really help the church just to focus in. And then my hope is that once they've done a vision day, the next time it rolls back around, then they can bring in Unstuck or bring in the Malfers group or someone like that to really even double down even more with, so we do that. And then the biggest thing we do now is to help us fulfill our vision is with the last C is connections or connecting. We have strategic partners that some of them, one of them helps to raise capital stewardship campaigns or financial discipleship for small churches. And make it very affordable. Or we have people who help churches qualify for loans. Or we just have all these strategic partners. Basically, here's the thing, Jason. And if somebody calls me and says, we have a problem in this arena, we want to have someone in place that we can connect them with. Just like you're going to become one of our strategic partners. You didn't know that yet. So when you told me about what you do in helping churches understand how analytics and stuff work, most of our people in our space don't understand that. Yeah. So we want to connect them to you. And so those are the 5 C's that we provide.
Man, I tell you, I get excited when I hear that because each one of those C's, whenever I talk to smaller churches, well, even bigger churches, there is always something there. They're always looking for the content or the coaching or the groups, the counseling or the conference, right? And what a great concept to have a conference where they can walk away feeling equipped and charged up, and actually they can do something that's not going to break the bank or out of their realm of possibility. I totally get what you're saying there because it's often when I go to conferences, I'm like, it's a show. And
wait, but and again, this is America. The host church typically they host and their heart is pure. They want to help, but it also, I mean, I've been enough of them where it's like, hey, look at what we've done, and and I remember hearing John Maxwell tell this story years ago how he was the keynote speaker at his denominational's national conference, and it was a 3-day thing, and he said the majority of the pastors there, their churches were under 100 people. Yeah. And it was like all the speakers had churches of 1,000 or 2,000, or this guy had a church of 5,000. Yeah. And every one of them, and you know how it is. Can I say fake humility? Sometimes we have, we just get, and we try to come across humble. Well, John said he sat in the balcony and he watched the pastors literally, he watched their body language just sink down and down and down and down and down. Because they're going, I can't do that. I can't do that. And he said the Holy Spirit spoke to him while he was up there in the balcony and said, I want you to scrap your message. I want you to get up and talk about your mistakes. Mm-hmm. So he said he got a legal pad out and penned out a sermon called Fumbles, Failures, and Flops. And he said, so he was telling his wife as they were going to lunch that day about it. He said, I've written down like 10 of my biggest failures. And he said, his wife goes, oh no, John, you got a lot more than that. And so she started adding to it. He said he got mad at her.
But he had several more pages here.
Yeah, and so he got up, and all he did was, he said he literally got up, and all he did was tell the mistakes he made. And he said by the time he left, those guys were energized. They're high-fiving each other because he gave them hope. Yeah. And that was one of the things I always loved about him. He's certainly very secure in what he does. Yeah. But he has always been good about telling when he messed up. Yeah. My book, which we'll talk about that in a second, it's all about. I'm just transparently telling you, I was a mess. Yeah. And here's what we've discovered, Jason, that it's kind of encouraging and kind of discouraging. And I don't have a scientific research to back this up, but this is just my hunch. It feels like about 50% of the churches that we encounter just don't want to die. And if we can meet a church that just doesn't want to die, we can help it. Now the other half are going to keep doing what they've been doing, and that's, I'm not going to worry about them because they've chosen to go that way. But if we meet I will do anything I possibly can within the gifts that God has given me. If I meet a pastor or I meet a church that says we just don't want to die, we will help them, because I think about all the souls we're going to reach.
Yeah.
I think about the next Billy Graham or Craig Groeschel or whoever's out there that right now might be 3 years old.
Yeah.
We got to help the churches.
That's right.
Hi, Bart Blair here. I'm the producer of Missional Marketing's Church Growth Interviews podcast. On behalf of our entire team, we really appreciate you tuning in. Let me ask you a question. If you're a church leader or a church communications professional, do you know how Google sees your church website? In other words, if people in your community were to Google churches near me, or best church in my city, or good church nearby, do you know where your church website would show up in those search results? At the top maybe, or somewhere in the middle, or somewhere on page 4? There's a common misunderstanding that if we simply build a great website and we launch it, that Google will somehow work its magic and people will find us online. But there's a bit more art and science to making sure that your church website shows up in the top of those search results. And that science is called local SEO, or local search engine optimization. And at Missional Marketing, local SEO is one of the core services that we provide for churches all across the United States and Canada. And we'd love to help you. If you'd like to learn more, click to our website at missionalmarketing.com and follow the link at the top of the page that says Church SEO. You can request a free local SEO report to see how your church is showing up in Google these days, and you can schedule an appointment to talk with Jason or with me or with one of our other digital strategists to help you decide whether or not a local SEO boost is right for your church. Hey, again, we appreciate you tuning into our podcast, and we look forward to the opportunity to serving you in your church and reaching more people for Jesus. Now, back to the show.
Yeah. Well, so let's get into what are some misconceptions or misunderstandings that people have about small churches that is not true, or because you said you made a comment that, hey, that church down the street that's running 600, let's just do what they do. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe God didn't call you to do that. He called you for a specific reason. And so what are some of those misconceptions that we have about smaller churches?
That they're irrelevant and they don't matter, or that they're out of touch. And honestly, that is a misconception, but it's somewhat true, because they're stalled. A lot of our small churches are stalled. Part of it's because, and I don't know if you wade into this area here or not, but a lot of our church government's not biblical. A lot of the church government in America is built around the American way of governing, the democracy. And you don't find that in the Bible. And so in fact, when we work with the church, the first thing we say is, hey, y'all, there's this book called the Bible. I say y'all because I'm from South Carolina. There's this book called the Bible. There's a man named Jesus who started something called the church. And in Ephesians 4, verses 11 through 16, he told us exactly how to do it. He said, I'm going to give you these ministry gifts, apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, to equip saints to do ministry. And then he promised what would happen out of that. You would get maturity and stability. You would create integrity, and you would have community. Verse 16 says, you're going to have community. The big argument has been for years, is Sunday morning, is that for the lost or is it for the saved? Well, according to Ephesians 4:16, it's for both. Yeah. I should be able to go to church and get edified, but it also should not be so insider focused that someone who doesn't know the Lord can't find him, because a lot of our language, a lot of our websites, everything's very churchy oriented. And so we want to help the church to get structured correctly, so that there are misconceptions. The other thing I think that maybe is a misconception is they don't care. And it's not that they don't care. I said this to you before we came on our recording. Most of our pastors went to school and they learned Greek and Hebrew and hermeneutics and homiletics and all the ethics and all that stuff, but no one taught them how to lead. And so if you haven't been taught how to lead, the average leader, a decent leader, can lead about 70 to 80 people themselves. And then you've got to hire some people, or bring on some staff, or raise up volunteers. You got to grow your leadership, and most churches aren't equipped to do that. Yeah. And so there's this misconception that they don't care because they become insider focused, and the truth is they don't know what to do.
Interesting. Thank goodness for you guys to be able to help pour into that. So, So last 2020, we're now in 2021. Praise God. But last year was was a very rough year for a lot of churches, especially.
And this year's been smooth as silk so far.
Yeah, we're running cloud nine over here.
Yeah.
But even through all the chaos and the setbacks and what just seems like a really horrible season, what were there some wins that smaller churches experienced that you can talk about?
We've often talked about how 2020 is hindsight is 2020.
Yeah,
But that's what we have. See, here's the thing. There was an article that came out, I think it was in September, by Barner, and the title of the article was like, one in five churches will not exist because of COVID, unless you do. And he talked about it was the whole point of the article was pointing to churches who had evolved and changed and created opportunities. But everybody took it and said, Barner said that 1 in 5 churches are going to close because of COVID. I don't believe that to be true at all.
I don't either.
I believe that what COVID did was it sped up what was already happening.
Yeah.
So if your church was out of touch and not relating and not connecting, it became quite apparent. So what COVID did, what 2020 did, is it peeled back the facade that we've been hiding behind for years. And God, I believe, is going to use what happened to help us to catch up and connect. Yes, there are going to be some churches that are going to not make it because they refuse to change, because their focus is insider, because they aren't willing to embrace technology. You can't do effective ministry long term without using technology. And why would you?
Yeah.
We literally were in a conference where one of our conferences where these two, and I'm going to call them Pharisaical pastors, started challenging us on whether even Paul would use a website if he had one. And they're like, they start getting into the, just trying to sound spiritual kind of stuff. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Do you think that Paul could have driven a car? He wouldn't have driven a car. Yeah. Or he could have caught a flight. Come on, dude. God has provided these opportunities. And the church, as you and I have talked about, it lags behind typically. What I have always said is the church tends to be about 20 years behind whatever's happening, whatever changes are happening. But the problem is now change is happening so rapidly in our culture that we can't, if we get left behind two years now, it actually becomes like 10.
Oh,
if that makes sense.
It totally does.
And so what's happening is 2020 helped us to realize we can change. Because here's what happens. So with the shutdowns, COVID hits and they ask us to shut things down. Well, when that happened, it was like about 5 weeks before Easter. So Easter was a great distraction. So all the churches were like, okay, we just got to get through Easter. We got to do Easter. So they evolved, they changed, they did what they had to do. Some churches had, here in the South, they literally had the staff and the praise team on the porch, and people sat in their cars and listened on an FM transmitter, which I thought that was the silliest thing I'd ever heard of. But it worked for them. Yeah. And so I don't know it all. That worked. The problem is now those churches are having to change because it's winter in the South. We're supposed to get snow here, which, by the way, it's a federal holiday when we have snow in South Carolina. But anyway, so what happened was everybody looked toward Easter, and then Jason, after Easter happened, I think probably the second week, I think pastors really got depressed because it's like they're like, okay, this COVID thing's not over yet.
Yeah. You
mean I'm going to have to keep doing this stuff online? And a lot of them couldn't even meet in person at all at that point.
Yeah.
And so, I think we could describe last year as that we went kicking and screaming into blessing because the Lord and culture and the need all forced us to change. Now, here's the thing that I don't want to see happen. I don't want us just to change and grab the first thing we see. I want us to change strategically to do what we need to be doing in our town, because hey, you minister to someone in Jackson, Mississippi, it's much different than how you minister to someone in Indianapolis and how you minister to someone in Bozeman, Montana. We all have the same mission, and that's the Great Commission. But how you, Jason, the way God wired you, carries it out, and how Dale carries it out is based on our personality and where we live and how we experience things. I would probably be a big flop in Arizona because I talk country. I'd entertain people for about 2 weeks and then go, all right, we're tired of that. You might, you're sharper than me, so you might work okay here in South Carolina. But God's wired us all a certain way.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do is, instead of just doing something to be doing something, instead of just live streaming to be live streaming, why are you live streaming?
Right.
What are you trying to accomplish? And see, that's why in this new year, our entire focus, or part of our major focus at 95 Network, is to help churches learn how to do hybrid church, which means doing a great in-person experience, but also having a great online presence, which is much more than just live streaming your service.
Absolutely. And it has two focuses. One, to connect with and disciple your people,
Yes.
but also to reach those outside your church that are not going to show up in, these days. Like, showing up to church is just a thing of the past.
Yes.
So people still do it, but it's definitely declining. And so, but they still want to, they're still curious. They still have felt needs. They still want to engage. And so, those churches, if you want to be relevant, you mentioned if you're 2 years, I mean, just imagine if, most churches, in fact, we talked to so many churches that when this thing broke, they're like, we need a website. Wait a minute. What? Or I'd ask, how do you do giving? Well, we pass a basket.
Yep.
You don't have online giving?
Okay. So
no, we've never needed that before.
I got to tell you this story. You will love this story. You brought it up. Okay. So I used to see, how can I say this? I worked at a church at some point in the past, because I don't necessarily want to identify that church, but I did work and I've worked at a lot of churches. And when I worked there, I noticed that they didn't do online giving. And so I asked, why don't we do online giving? And the pastor said, well, our financial person won't let us do it. I said, what? Yeah, the person over the finances won't let us do it. So I went to that person. I said, why don't we do online giving? And they told me it's not biblical. And I said, why is it not biblical? And they said, because the Bible says you're supposed to pass the plate. And I said, okay, pull your Bible out and show me that one.
Yeah.
And their point was that giving is supposed to be an act of worship. Well, you can do an act of worship at your home.
Absolutely.
But that was that was just shocking to me. We did finally get the church to change and update. And you know what? The wild thing was, about 60% of our giving came online after we changed.
That's right.
Because society, that's where it's at. But because of my age, I'm going to be 60 pretty soon. I got gray hair. I love the old people. I'm not an anti-old person. I believe everything we have in the church today is built on the shoulders of those older members of our church and those in the graveyard. I believe that. So I don't want to dishonor them. But it's not dishonoring to look at the old people and say, folks, we got to change to reach your grandkids and your great-grandkids. The message does not change, but the methods have to.
Yep, have to. Yeah. Yep. Good stuff. Well, let's turn the corner. Let's talk about your book. Okay. You recently wrote a book called Stalled. Why'd you write it? What's it about? Give us some insight.
It's my story. So when I met with Tony Morgan, when I launched my new ministry, the new Dale Sellers Leadership Ministry, back in February of 2014, as I told you, I'd been out of the loop, I didn't know what was going on for 14 years. Yeah. Well, my oldest daughter works at Unstuck, and she works for Tony, and I knew Tony, and so I just reached out to Tony. This was in April, after I launched the ministry in February. I just wanted to talk to him and just get some updates on where things were. And Jason, I had to make a phone appointment. I didn't know what that was. I thought you could just call people, but no, I had to make a phone appointment. And so it's like a month later before I can talk to him. So I'm talking to Tony in April of 2014, and I'm all fired up and I'm all excited. And I'm talking about what I'm going to do, and I really look up to Tony. I view him as a mentor and that, especially now, as a dear friend. Yeah. But I'm talking, and about 15 minutes into the conversation, he says, Dale. He said, I need to tell you something. I said, and I'm like waiting with bated breath. Tony Morgan's going to give me a word from God. He goes, I can't relate to you at all. I'm going, what? He goes, I can't relate to you at all. He says, all I've ever done is work in large churches or large organizations, or I worked, in city government. I've never worked in a small church. I can't relate to you at all. And I said, Tony, I want to say something to you today that I've never told anyone. I said, I feel like a failure. I've been in ministry at that point now almost 35 years. And I said, I thought I'd be there by now. I said, I'm ashamed of myself. I'm ashamed of the fact that I pastored a church for 12 years. This started with 30 people when I was there, grew to 300, and fell back down to 150 because we had a terrible split.
Mm.
And I said, I feel like a failure. I feel like Jesus is mad at me. And I said, and I've never told anybody this. I said, Tony, I thought I'd be there by now. And he goes, Dale, that's fascinating. Why don't you write what you just shared with me in an article form? I'll put it on Tony Morgan Live. Let's put it out there and just see if you get any feedback. So I wrote an article. It was released, I think, in May of 2014 called I Thought I'd Be There by Now, Confessions of a Small Church Pastor. And Jason, I heard from pastors all over America going, I feel, you just described how I feel about myself. I felt like I was less than. I felt like Jesus was disappointed with me. Part of it's how I grew up. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church here in the South, and I would go to these youth rallies, and they would tell us things like that there are people that God has called you to reach, and if you don't reach those people, they will go to hell because of you. Or when you get to heaven, there's going to be a big video camera, a big screen showing your life, and it's going to show you all the people in hell you didn't reach. Wow. Well, being wired as I am and being a firstborn, I took all that stuff literally.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when I'd walk through my high school, I felt guilty because I didn't get everybody in the high school saved. And so what happened to me, that got down on the inside of me to the point that I reached this place in my life where I was very unhealthy. It created stress in my life. 5 years ago, last week, I had quadruple bypass surgery. I was 53 years old. I had a widowmaker, which means my heart was blocked. I had one artery 100% blocked and 3 arteries 90% blocked and didn't know it. Wow. And I asked my doctor, I said, how did this happen to me? He said, hypertension and high blood pressure because of your vocation. I said, are you saying the ministry almost killed me? He said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. The stress that I was under. And look, it wasn't just the stress of the performance. It was the stress of I'm not good enough. I can't arrive there. I didn't know where there was, Jason. I was so discontented and so disappointed with myself that I felt like I couldn't get there because I didn't know where there was. And so I'd have a pastor or two ask me, Dale, what's it going to take for you to feel like a success? And I'd go, I don't know. So I was really, really unhealthy. And so God had to do a work in my physical heart, but he also did a healing in my spiritual heart to let me know he's not mad at me. And I have a friend at New Spring Church who tweeted one day, his name is Shane, on Twitter. He said, you can't let God down because you're not holding him up. Well, that's not all that deep, but for me, that was life-changing because I all this for the first 50 years of my life, I was like, I got to hold. If I don't come through in this arena, if I don't come through, then these people are going to go to hell because of me. And Jesus must be so disappointed with me because I haven't achieved what he wanted me to do. So that is the basis for the book. And so what I did, I just wrote the book's called Stalled. Hope and Help for Pastors Who Thought They'd Be There by Now. And it's really my story. It's very transparent and just kind of walks you through how the first section is, why can't I get there? The second section is, what will I find there? And then the third section is the fulfillment of living there, which is where I'm finally at now. You know, and now I only got, 30 years left?
You're just getting started.
Whatever God determines. It doesn't matter anymore.
Wow. What a great resource for pastors, young and old, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're always on the journey. And
well, one of the things when we named it Help and Hope for Pastors Who Thought They'd Be There, I didn't really want to call it that because there's 30-year-olds who feel like they thought they'd be there by now. The young, the end of the millennials and the beginning of the next generation, if they haven't changed the world by the time they're 30, they feel like their life's a waste. So the book speaks to young and old, but it's Jason, the response to it's been amazing. I mean, I just talked to a pastor yesterday in Tennessee who read the book and just reached out to me. It's crazy, man. It's just crazy. This is so weird.
Well, that is so cool how God's using your past and your ministry experience. And there's a reason why you went through all that. His purpose, his plan. And
I was just so performance oriented. I gauged everything. I know you're saved. Listen, I know, again, pastors, listen, I know what you believe theologically. And I knew theologically you're saved by grace, free gift, free gift, free gift. But I grew up in a culture that would preach you're saved by grace. It's a free gift. But then you prove how saved you are by what you do.
Yeah.
And that got inside of me
Boy, that's
to the
tough.
point that I didn't even know it. So I could never be happy. I could never be satisfied. I had 3 areas of my life that I was always gauging. I was gauging my spiritual life, my family life, and then my vocational, the pastoring side. And I never allowed myself to ever score high in all 3 categories. There was always one category that felt like it was lagging way behind the other 2.
Hmm.
Now, I will say the one thing that I think I did right in those years was I made my family first priority.
Yeah.
I did not sacrifice my wife or my kids. I have 3 daughters. I would not sacrifice them on the altar of ministry. And I'm so thankful I didn't do that, because then I wouldn't be talking to you today.
Yeah. Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we work with, we're blessed and fortunate to be serving a lot of small churches around the country that I think are doing amazing things. And
Yes.
I think this can be really encouraging for them. So if you haven't got Dale's book, get it. Right, go to Amazon or wherever.
It's on Amazon. It's David C. Cook Publishing published the book. It came out last September. It's on Amazon. You can get it. It's also in a Kindle version as well. We are actually creating a new resource that it's called From Stall to Freedom. That's going to be. I've shot 3 videos that we have done for our virtual conferences. It'll be in, like, if you can see over my shoulder, there's a blue box back there called Vision Box. That's a resource we have at 95 Network. We're going to have the stalled box, that's coming out pretty soon too.
Oh, good.
And it'll have videos with it to kind of work through, so you can actually take your staff through that as well.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's 2 things you need to do, church. You need to buy the book, and then you should become a member of 95 Network. It's $95 for the year.
It's for the year, and we are literally, as we speak today, we are overhauling our website, and we're overhauling our membership process to even make it even more engaging and more valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just some incredible things in there. Like Tony Morgan did a course a couple of years ago called Leading an Unstuck Church. Well, if you buy that, if you go straight to Unstuck and buy that, it's $499.
Yeah.
Tony gave it to us. So if you join 95 Network, you get that course for free.
Oh, there's the value right there.
Yeah, well, he loves the small church, and it's a 12 lesson course to work your staff or your board through on how to make sure your church isn't stuck. And that's just one of the resources that's in there.
That's awesome. Okay, so you've talked about you get inspiration from John Maxwell, pretty good leader. You get inspiration from Tony Morgan, another phenomenal leader. Is there anywhere else that you find inspiration, or what are you reading these days, or what blogs are you following?
I don't read a lot at this point because I'm writing and I don't want to plagiarize. I love Andy Stanley. I think Andy Stanley is a next generation leader. I love Robert Morris. I love his heart. He's a very passionate pastor type person. I love connected to Rick Warren somewhat with purpose driven. Dabo Swinney, the football coach at Clemson, is an inspiration to me because I'm a big Clemson fan, and he takes so much heat because of his stand up for his faith, and that is very encouraging. That he's just living his life, he's just being who he is, and in that setting. So all the Ohio State people won't like that, but anyway, of course this year they beat the snot out of us. But anyway, those people inspire me. But probably my greatest inspiration, and you're not old enough to even probably remember this group. There was a group in the 70s and 80s and 90s called Truth. And a guy named Roger Breland founded that group, and he took me under his wing when we were doing our music ministry. And he was the guy that I had to fall back on. There are a couple of moments in my life where, like, I had really tough decisions to make, and I reached out to him. The first one, and this will speak to our pastors who are listening. So when we launched our music group, when we went full time from part time, for the first 2 years we would work jobs during the week and travel on the weekend. So we'd do Friday night, Saturday, and 2 concerts on Sunday, then be back at work at Monday morning, 8 o'clock. That about killed us. So we go full time. But once we go full time, man, we hit a season where there was just a lull in scheduling events. And it looked like we weren't going to make it. So I called Roger Breland. This is pre-cell phone days. That's how old I am. And I called and I left something. I left him on. He had a thing called an answering machine. Okay, so you don't even know what that is, probably. I left him a message, and I just said, "Hey," I said, "Hey, Mr. Breland, this is Dale. We're dying out here. Call back if you care." And I hung up. And so he calls back. He goes, "What's your problem?" I said, man, we're dying out here. We can't, we're not making it financially. We can't get bookings. How do you know when it's time to quit? And I want to say this because I want the pastors listening right now to catch this. How do you know when it's time to quit? And he goes, okay. He said, well, Dale, did God call you to start? I said, yes, sir. He said, did God call you to quit? And I said, no, sir. He said, do you want to honor God with your life? And I said, yes, sir. He goes, well, it sounds to me like you just you're going to have to hang in there through the tough times, because if you quit and you want to honor God, you're going to have to start over again, but you're going to be further behind. Mm. Jason, I cannot tell you the impact that had in my life, because we stuck it out, and then things just went wide open for us. But he helped me to understand there are ups and downs. There are springs and summers and winters and falls. There are seasons in life and seasons in ministry. There are times when you have great success, and it's just like every sermon you're preaching, everybody's going, oh my goodness, that's the greatest pastor I've ever heard. And there's other times you'll preach the best message you ever heard and nobody likes it. It's not about that. It's not about how you feel. It's about resting in who you are and what you're called to do. And the other thing, I called him one time and I had to fire somebody, and that was very difficult. I didn't know how to fire somebody in ministry. And I asked him, I said, how do you do that? He says, well, I'll look at what we're doing here. He said, I pull myself back out of it, and I say, what's best for our ministry? And those two pieces of advice, and that shaped a lot of my life, because he paid a lot of dues and he was willing to share with me. So he's a major, major influencer in my life. I just almost a father figure.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. So if people want to get connected, 95network.org, go buy the book, become a member, and get connected. It's a tough season right now. We're still in it. A lot of churches can't meet.
We're going to be in it the rest of the year. Here's the thing, Jason. I think a lot of churches are like, we just want to get back to the way things were. That's not happening.
And you don't want that.
No, we're never going back. It's never going to be like it was before. And again, at 95 Network, we exist to help the small and mid-sized church. And if you need help, if you don't know what to do, please reach out to us. I talk to pastors every week all across America and some around the world. Every week I have calls where people reach out and just say, man, we don't know what to do. And listen, if I don't know what to do, I'll say, listen, let me connect you with my friend Jason. He'll tell you. I mean, I will connect you to whoever, but we don't. Here's the thing. I don't want you laying on the floor of your office like I did for years and cry because you don't have a friend. We want to be that friend for you. And we love the small church. And if anybody asks me, why do you do what you do at 95 Network? This is it. When I get to heaven, I want Jesus to walk over and give me a fist pump and say, hey, thanks for helping the small church.
Yeah.
That's why we do it.
It matters. It matters. Thank you, Dale. We appreciate your insight.
Thank you, sir.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Well, as I recap this podcast, a big thank you to Dale. Dale, we appreciate the fact that you have poured decades of your life into ministry, and God is using you in a mighty way. And thank you for writing that book. I think a lot of us will benefit from that, especially if you're feeling frustrated, stuck, or stalled. And church, you should do two things. Number one, go get his book. A great read, a lot of insight. And so go get his book and find it on Amazon. Second is go to 95network.org and subscribe. It's pretty cost effective. And you're going to get those 5 C's. And I love that they're offering so much value for a very small investment. And so tune into that. Here at Missional Marketing, we desperately care about all churches, but especially smaller churches that may not have all the resources. And so our heart and our desire is to educate and equip so that you're informed and you have knowledge and you can make good decisions about what it takes to grow your church and reach more people. And so using digital tools is a great way to go about doing it. You don't have to be an expert. In fact, if you don't know anything, that's okay. Let's start right there. And we want to help you. And so on missionalmarketing.com, we have a ton of resources in our blog, certainly all the podcasts that we do. And throughout all the pages of Missional Marketing, we offer free reports and free forms. We would also love to have a conversation with you, a complimentary conversation to explain what you're looking at. And that way, we're educating and informing you. So take advantage of that. So from there on, we're excited about where we're headed. And hopefully we're going to be getting out of this season where we are with COVID. And but it's so important. We can never go back. I don't think we'll go back to the way it used to be. We have to look towards the future. And so I encourage you to tune in and get plugged in. All right, until next time, God bless.